Hello and welcome back to another week on the Millie Fox Show. On this podcast, I speak to high-achieving women who know that there's more to life, that there's meant to be more juice and deliciousness and fulfillment and depth and connection. And up until this point, you've followed all of the rules and the checklists and all of those things, and you're just still not feeling what you know you're meant to be feeling. So that's what we talk about on this podcast, is how do we bring the juice back into your life? And I know a thing or two about it because I was living a life that looked pretty juicy from the outside, but didn't feel that way from the inside. And in fact, felt very different on the inside than it looked from the outside. And so I took a long time to build the courage up to leave that life, right? And I knew I wasn't going to leave that life to live a lesser life. I knew I was going to leave that life to build something even better. And when I'm talking about even better, I'm not talking about flashier. I'm not talking about more things or more glamour or more success. I'm talking about the real stuff that actually matters. I'm talking about the safety, the connection, the realness, the authenticity behind the scenes, the ability to feel worthy in your day-to-day existence, and to have that shine outwards, right? And I have been interested in manifestation for a long time. For any of you who know me listening to this, you know that I've been, manifestation Millie for years. And my dad introduced me to manifestation when I was probably about 17, formally. And he gave me the Abraham Hicks CDs to listen to in the car when I was driving around my mom's, 1996 Jetta or whatever. And this was not in 1996, it was an old Jetta at the time. But if you know me, you also know two other things. You know that I went through a pretty rough childhood, and that I also have a lot of issues with the mainstream manifestation world, because the mainstream manifestation world is wrought with shame and comparison and unrealistic expectations of toxic positivity, toxic gratitude, etc., right? And despite all of those things, I have managed to manifest the fuck out of an incredible life on the other side of blowing up a marriage and the joint custody and all of the pieces that go with that. And I'm not here to say that I've manifested a perfect life by any means. I will always continue to share the realness and the struggles that go on, and that's going to be next week's episode, is going to be talking about the balance between, to make it sound cliche, grit and grace, or, self-compassion and keeping your standards. But on this week's episode, I'm really going to dive into what it is I did, looking back, to go from where I was to where I am today. And where I am today, for those of you who don't know, is that I'm engaged to the man of my dreams, my love of my life. We're set to be married in October, pending a couple of, date issues, but we have our wedding mostly planned up until this point. We just went on an incredible European vacation. I am going on my bachelorette trip this weekend to Tulum. I never did a bachelorette anything in my previous life before I got married. And we blended our families. We are living together in love, not always in harmony, because you know what it's like with kids. And we're house hunting and car hunting and, all the things that you could possibly want. And we've been together for 3 years now. So this has all happened in a relatively short period of time. And I also have this, job and career, this business of helping women do these things for themselves. So I am extremely blessed. And this is not the first time that I've sat down and asked myself, like, hey, how did you do it? Because I also got myself out of a really terrible family life growing up, right? I left home at 17 and I got myself through university and I worked and I, moved to the big city from the suburbs and I built a life where I wasn't replicating this cycle of getting into, abuse and addiction and those sort of things. Like, yes, I did have my own version of struggles, but I sat down, now was probably 6 years ago, and I asked myself how I did it at that point too. And the answers are the same because the answers are not steps that I took. They are questions that I had to answer for myself. And I have talked about this multiple times, but I'm going to talk about it again through this lens because I think that this process that I have created is endlessly valuable. And I've created courses on this and taught groups and masterminds on this, but it's not a secret. I'm not gatekeeping it at all. So when people teach manifestation, they usually say, oh, the first step is to figure out what you want. This is absolutely wrong, okay? The first step in any manifestation process is your identity, okay? And you need to first know who you are. The first step in any manifestation process is to be clear on who you are, which involves a few layers, right? The question of who you are is something you could answer for the rest of your life. So you have your human level identity. You have your source level identity, which is like your soul. And then you've got your vortex level identity, which is like the next level version of you, your highest self. Not the perfect, non-human level you. It's still going to be human, but you've got these 3 layers of yourself. And you need to get clear on what your values are. Okay. And part of your human identity is looking into the body as well. The body is such an important key source of information because your nervous system is going to set a lot of the limits in what you're able to receive and hold. Okay. So if I were to simplify this for you, it would be get clear on what's actually really important to you before you decide on anything that you actually desire. Because when you make a manifestation that is aligned with your desires, you're much more likely to actually feel the way that you want to feel when you receive it, right? So I thought about the type of woman that I wanted to be. I thought about the type of woman that I was currently being in my current life. And I thought, no, I want to be free. Freedom was one of my key words. Peace and freedom were 2 of my key words that I had when I thought about that identity-wise and feeling-wise. That should tie in, right? And when you imagine this version of you, it should bring up a feeling. And the desire then is just a direction that's going to take you down a path of more and more and more of that feeling, right? So the first question is, who are you? The second question is then, what do you want? So if I know I want to feel free and I want to feel peace, what in my past has made me feel that way? What in my day-to-day life allows me to feel that way, right? Because it's not about chasing some sparkly, dangly carrot that's way over there that you actually have no idea what it tastes like. And once you get to that carrot and you take out a big old chomp and you realize that, oh, that didn't make me feel free or peaceful at all, that's where you got to start all over again and go, shoot. And that's why so many of us get to this destination of these lives that we created that we thought were what we wanted. And then we wake up one day and we're like, what the actual hell? This all feels really flat. And it's because of that disconnection from self. It's because of that disconnection from the present moment and our bodies. Because when our nervous system is jacked and running the show, also, too, you're not going to be able to be as present. You're not going to be able to be as open to receiving. You're not going to be able to the feelings of peace, of gratitude, of abundance. So I always put the nervous system and the identity right out at the forefront of any manifestation process, and then we look at desires. So then it's like, ooh, what do we want to play with here? If it's a person, when I manifested my partner, I sat down and I wrote out 6 or 7 pages. At the top of each page, I put, a category. So that would be like health and fitness, spirituality, business, family. I put all of these categories and I just brain dumped of exactly what that person would be like in those different areas. So I got clear, and clarity is not somewhere you just arrive. It's kind of more like it's a process. It's kind of a state of discovery of like, okay, we're getting more and more and more clear as we kind of take that little brush and clear the sand off of the, the relic or the fossil or whatever, because we're reconnecting to something through this process. We're not just looking for shiny and new. We're feeling parts of ourselves, and we're connecting parts of ourselves to the things that are meant for us, right? Because what is meant for you can never miss you, but we still need to be open to it. It's not like it's going to fly by and then boom, you're never going to get the chance again for that opportunity. It'll just look different when it comes again, right? Because it's always going to try to make its way to you. That's big magic. So you get clear on what you want. You have to give yourself permission. Okay, you have to give yourself permission. It would have been really easy for me to go out there and listen to everything that people were saying about the dating world. Like, oh, dating in 2026 is a dumpster fire. There's all sorts of, losers out there, and it's such a waste of time, and get ready for all the F-boys and blah, blah, blah. I had this belief in this, this is where being delusional comes in, but I was delusional enough to believe that there was somebody out there for me, because I thought, if I exist, this is me, tooting my own horn a little bit, but I was like, well, if someone like me exists who's interested in health and entrepreneurship and spirituality and family, like core values of mine, there has to be other people out there that are like that, right? So I went into that with that belief and permission that I'm worthy of that type of love that I've been desiring. I am worthy, and I believe that I can have it. And there's work that goes into raising your self-worth, like being someone you can trust. I talk about self-trust all the time. I was building my self-trust by making moves. I was doing the bold actions. I was showing up. I was doing yoga every single day. I started going to the gym. I started going out and doing things that I hadn't done in years and years and years because I felt too guilty, and I didn't give myself the permission, right? Like, I started being a different version of myself, and that changes what comes to you. Okay, from an opportunity standpoint, from an energetic standpoint, from a woo-woo standpoint, whatever you want to say. If you're more open and you're putting yourself out there in new ways, there's absolutely no doubt that new things are not going to come your way, right? So there's that. So we have who are you, we have what do you want, and then we do have to look a little bit at what's getting in the way. Because as Abraham Hicks says, when you know what you don't want, you know what you do want. Right? We don't have to spend a ton of time peeling back layers of limiting beliefs and doing all this shadow work and shit. Like, I have done that, but I can tell you that I cannot attribute the changes in my life to doing a ton of peeling back limiting beliefs. Okay. what I did attribute it to is focusing on what I do want to be and the actions of that type of woman. So we need to look at that. We need to look at our perfectionism. We need to look at our nervous system, right? And then we have to ask the question of, what do I need to do? So that's the fourth question. Who am I? What do I want? What's getting in the way? What do I need to do? So for me, my nervous system was a huge part of it because I grew up in trauma. My nervous system was absolutely fried. I didn't understand the true implications of this until I started to study the nervous system, until I got into a coaching container where I worked with a coach for 9 months on my nervous system solely and specifically because I realized that that was contributing to a lot of the behavior that I was exhibiting that I wasn't proud of, and I didn't want to be that person anymore, right? So what I did want was to be peaceful. I wanted to be regulated, and I'm not fully there yet. Like, I still jump like a freaking cat when my fiance comes into the room unexpectedly. It must be extremely funny for him. Last night it happened when I was naked. I just went, it was hilarious. But, you know, we move in the direction of what we want. So we ask ourselves, what do we need to do? That is the next question. And so that can be a really overwhelming question. And my suggestion for this is to not let yourself get overwhelmed by it, by really focusing, getting laser focused on what's important. So here we need to look at we need to look at what are our top priorities, and then what are the most needle moving tasks that you can possibly do to move that forward. You know, just think of the most impactful things. I literally have a framework for this called priorities and impact. Okay. And as an ADHD person, where I'm constantly down 17 different rabbit holes in my brain every 3 minutes, I need those reminders. I need simple tools. I don't need apps and you know, this and that. I've never taken medication, but I have managed to accomplish a shit ton by coming back to very simple principles like this. Like, what is most important to you today? What actions would align with what's most important to you today? So I take those actions, and then I look at, what am I going to do when and if I get off track? So for me, okay, let's go back. I asked myself, who are you? I said, you are a grown woman. You are a woman in charge of your life. You are a woman who deserves to feel loved and accepted and worthy and alive and appreciated, and, you know, all of these things that I wanted to feel in my life and in a partnership. And then I looked at, well, what do you want? You know, I wanted to live my life in a certain way where I could do it without shame or guilt. And then I asked myself, what kind of partner do you want? What kind of family do you want? And so I wrote out the list that I explained to you. And another thing I did that I didn't include was, I used to go to bed at night. I created my own little sanctuary in my office, and I bought a bed, and I was staying in there, and I used to go to bed every night, and I would imagine myself what it would feel like to be wrapped in the arms of a person who loved me the way that I wanted to be loved. And I imagined myself with those feelings and giving myself that love. So imagination is a really strong tool for manifestation. I'm sure you've heard of this before, but the only thing that I want to mention there in the caveat about that is, we don't want to force anything. We don't want to force ourselves to be happy all the time. We don't want to force ourselves to be high vibe. We just want to constantly be reorienting ourselves to what we want, what we do want, how we do want to feel, and choosing thoughts and conditions around us that help us with that. Okay? Not in a grippy, obsessive way. In a, hey, I'm doing everything I can right now to make myself feel really good and supported and trust myself and proud of myself and all of these things. And And I know that I'm moving the needle day by day because I know I'm focused on what I want. I know I'm focused on my priorities. I know I'm focused on needle moving tasks that are moving me towards that thing. And the imagination piece is really just a layer of magic on top. It's a layer of fantasy and fun. It's like, why do we love fantasy movies or books or, any kind of storytelling we love? Because it lights up part of our brain and it provides us with something that we enjoy. So that's what the imagination piece needs to be for you. And it needs to be experiencing it as though it's already happened for the sole purpose of enjoying that process, period. And what I mean by that is enjoy imagining. I remember a time where I used to lay in bed at night, try to force myself to imagine, and I couldn't do it, and it wasn't coming. And so then I'd feel bad that I wasn't able to imagine it or feel it. And I was like, this is dumb. This is stupid. This is bad advice. This is not when I would, lay and imagine being wrapped in the arms of a man that truly loved me. At that point, that truly just felt really juicy and delicious for me to do that every night. So I did it. I did rituals and practices because they made me feel like I was wrapped in a warm cocoon. So you have to find those things for yourself, right? So I got clear on that. I felt the feelings and I did the things. And I gave myself what I needed. I asked myself what I needed, and then I gave myself what I needed. And I nurtured my courage. Courage is a huge, huge, huge part of this. And you nurture your courage by doing courageous things, also by being the person that you know that you can trust, being the person that you can, that knows that you have your own back, right? So courage, compassion, and connection are these three really, really important pillars that I learned from The Gifts of Imperfection from Brené Brown. I would say if anybody impacted me more than anything else, it's Brené Brown and Abraham Hicks. Those are the two sources that I would tell everyone to read The Gifts of Imperfection, because that gives you that compassion. And also, when you get into embracing yourself imperfectly, it also allows you to go into more connection. And when you have those two, you can do the courage thing. Okay, because I know that this takes a lot of courage, especially, if you're looking at becoming a single mom and the financial burden of all of that. And there's so many things where, you could just tell yourself, I can't. But what if you could? What if you could? That really is the question. And then the final question of what will you do when you get off track? Not if, but when you get off track, that's when we need to go back to our compassion practices. That's when we need to go back to our what do I need question, and make sure that you have those things in place so that inevitably when you fall down, you have that bounciness to be able to get back up, that resilience to be able to get back up. And then you also have that in your store bank of evidence that you're a fucking bad bitch. Okay? Because even in the moments of self-doubt, which I'm in a season of self-doubt right now. Like I'm going to be completely real about that. I'm going to talk about it in next week's episode. When you're in those seasons, you have to be able to look at the past and go like, well, look what I did then and look what I did then, right? And the only way to build up that store bank of evidence is to start taking those action steps. So what is the one most courageous thing you could do for yourself today? Where do you need to give yourself more permission? Where do you need to connect deeper with your identity to know what your values are? Where are you disconnected from yourself so you're not able to hear yourself clearly? Those are all really, really important questions. They're also really, really important questions for anyone questioning their marriage, which is what we're going into in Decide, which is my beta cohort program that's starting mid-September. So if you're hearing this and you're like, oh my God, I'm in this position right now, please DM me Decide on Instagram to get the details. to get in on this very first inaugural round of all of the things that led me to be able to make this move. Whether it is you stay in your marriage or you don't, all of this is extremely important for becoming the woman that you want to be. And I'll leave you with that. If you like this episode, please share it with somebody. If you know someone who would find it valuable. If you like this episode, you can leave me a review, you can rate it, you can subscribe, whatever you can do to help this podcast reach more women interacting with it on podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. I would be extremely grateful. And I look forward to having you back again. Love you so much. Bye for now.